I live in a family of 3. Just my mother, little brother, and I. We've had each other's backs for as long as I can remember. The inseparable trio, if you would. My life is pretty relaxed. Nothing complicated other than the fact that we all move a lot. My mother never made it apparent to us why we traveled from home to home so much, but I never felt the need to question her. I eventually got used to moving. It became a part of us, I guess. Never got the chance to truly settle down and make new friends. I guess that made me a bit lonely, knowing even if I did make friends, it would only be for a year. I'm doing the dishes this one fateful day when my mother walks in front of me from a long day of work with nothing but the words,
"We're leaving tomorrow. Get ready to pack your things. I don't want any time wasted."
Now, as I said, I was used to this, so I didn't even bother questioning her. I packed my stuff early so I wouldn't have to wake up and pack them. That day was nothing special, just watching Netflix as my mom cleared the house of everything we would need. This is bullshit. All the time we always have to leave for some unknown reason. I can't even make friends, and she doesn't even seem to care. As I rambled to myself, when night fell, so did I. Slept with a little spark of anger inside me, knowing today was the last day I got to see something familiar. I got out of bed, took a shower, and brushed my teeth. I went downstairs to prepare a bowl of cereal, as I always do, in the same scene I always come across on our day of departure. Dead room, nothing to look at. Heck, even the curtains were still down.
Hurry up and eat. Time waits for no woman, and plus I have some shows I want to catch when we get to our new house.
Yeah, I'll be right there in a minute. No need to rush that. That house isn't going anywhere. I ate my cereal and got to the car with my little brother passed out in the back seat. My mother walked in and looked at me with a smile as if I was excited to leave. We drove off and I think it took us about 3 hours to get to our destination, considering I watched 3 full movies before we even came to a stop.
Alright kids, we're here. Unpack everything. Isn't the place beautiful? I made sure it was as calm and as quiet, just the way you like it, honey.
Yeah, Mom, it does look nice. Haven't seen a more beautiful place. I was being sarcastic, of course, but the place was actually really beautiful. Roses were trimmed, hedges, no cars anywhere, which was strange but added to the peace and quiet. The only noise was from the hummingbirds chirping throughout the day. I obviously didn't mind that. Who would? The people in the neighborhood. I could see them staring at us through their windows as if aliens just landed near them, but I shrugged it off to them being interested in their new neighbors. Wow, this place is huge.
The outside can be quite deceiving. The inside is the true reward here. So well, kids, what do you think? Unpack your things, your bags, and get situated. Pick any room that you like.
The place was like a castle, but obviously not castle big, but the design was just as royal. Paintings, red carpets, and even armor was hung on the wall as if we were still in those ages, but nevertheless it looked great. I walked up the creaking stairs and found this room which definitely twice the size of my old room. Maybe moving here wasn't the worst choice. I thought it might have been. I said to myself as I looked around the room and got comfortable. We finished packing and placing everything where we wished it to be, and my mother got to those shows she said she wanted to watch. My little brother played with his soccer ball in the yard. It was about 2 p.m. The sun was high and hot, and the quiet neighborhood got a bit less quiet, if I should put it like that. It seemed my little brother made friends because there were soon about 6 other children playing along with him. Lucky bastard. I think at how easily he makes friends while I was lonely, waiting for the next time we got to move, afraid making any friends would only end in a sad realization. Soon even the adults came out. Some were talking to each other and some were tending to their gardens. I decided to take a walk to get used to the neighborhood and maybe meet some new people. Mom, I'm gonna take a walk. I'll be back soon.
Sure thing, honey. Be safe and make sure you're back before 6. The neighbors say it's best to do so or bad things might happen.
Okay. I'll keep that in mind. What a bunch of weirdos, I said to myself while walking past the children playing on the grass. As I walked down the street, people inside their and outside their homes were staring at me very intensively, as if I was some sort of mob boss they didn't want to anger. The eyes were slowly getting to my head as thoughts ran through me. I wondered why everyone was acting so off. This place must have never been getting any visitors anytime soon, I said as I continued my walk. I was stopped by this rugged-looking man. He must have been homeless, I thought to myself, but he seemed very intent on speaking to me. I don't have any spare change. Now leave me alone, you creep. He told me he wasn't looking for anything. All he wanted was to warn me of danger, seeing I was clearly not a familiar face to this neighborhood. I told him how I just moved here with my family and asked, "Danger? What danger are you talking about?"
"A man walks these streets, kid." Well, to call him a man would be a lie, but he takes the form of a man in his mid-30s, comes around every day, 6 sharp. His skin is so pale you might think he has no blood flowing through his veins. We call him Pale the Mouthless. Pale for the same reason I just told you, and mouthless because he has no mouth. Yet you can hear his voice or voices. We can't say which voice is ever his and which isn't. I know I sound crazy, but kid, you need to get back home before the sun goes down, or else we won't be getting home anytime soon.
Now, I'm no strong believer of spirits and ghosts, but this man seemed truly scared of this Pale the Mouthless, or whatever he called him. I saw it in his eyes. He wasn't lying to me. Normally you can spot a liar quite easily, all because of their eyes, but this man didn't seem as if he was lying, so I heed his warning and turned around to walk back home as he slowly began to disappear the further I got. 5:50 p.m. and I could see my house creeping into my sight. Finally, I didn't think I'd be this glad to see my new home. I've been walking for a while now. I need some rest. I'm making my way to my house and I noticed how everyone stopped staring. Instead, they were panicking to get back inside their homes as if some terrible storm was approaching. Weird, but better than being stared at, I said to myself as I reached my front lawn and my little brother was still laying on the grass playing with his toys. I remembered what the homeless man said. That's when I told my little brother to come inside just in case he wasn't crazy after all. My little brother didn't question me. He gladly walked inside as I shut and locked the door. I went upstairs to my room and looked out the window to a dead neighborhood. Not a single human in sight. No sounds whatsoever. Even the birds seemed to have left. I'm guessing it's 6 already? I said to myself, wondering how serious they take the 6 p.m. rule. I noticed a bit of fog beginning to form down the street. It seemed clear in the front but so heavy in the back I could barely see 4 houses away. "Is that smoke?" I said, looking at the obvious fog that appeared out of nowhere. It slowly but surely came closer, and soon enough, even our house was indulged in. I could barely see outside. Maybe the reason the locals say to rush back home is to not get lost in the fog. That seems a lot more sensible than some scary pale white man. I went to lay on my bed when I suddenly heard some form of whispering in the distance. Who could possibly be outside in all that fog? I wondered as I looked outside to see the culprit who was the cause of these whispers. I saw nothing at all, until I could make out a silhouette in the distance that seemed to be a human walking towards the direction of our house. "Oh, how scary," I said, mocking the fact that this pale-the-mouthless man didn't show any scary features. He got closer and I could see his face a bit, even under the top hat he wore, but I couldn't see a mouth. This was odd, because I could clearly see his eyes and nose, but where his mouth was supposed to be was nothing but flesh. I still didn't believe that some spirit was walking around, so I opened my window to call to the man. Maybe he needed a place to avoid the fog, so I decided I'll be his hero. As the window opens, his eyes finally met mine. But at the second, I felt a horrible dread shoot through me, as if my inside sensed immense danger. His eyes seemed to glow dim yellow. Or maybe it was my head. I saw his mouth area stretched out, a wrinkled smile shape. Even without a mouth, this thing was smiling at me. It began to open its jaw as the flesh off of its face began to tear apart. I could barely bear the sight. I awoke under my window with the fresh memory of that thing still burnt onto my brain. From the floor I could see that it was still foggy. I probably passed out for a minute or two. That's when I heard my mother call me.
"Honey, come downstairs. Food's ready."
I opened my door, and as I walked past my little brother's room, I felt a hand pull me into it, and the door shut in front of me. I was about to scream when I saw the person who grabbed me was my mother. She looked afraid, but she told me to keep quiet, and then she heard the voice as well.
"Honey, the food's ready. Hurry downstairs."
I sat there in shock of the situation my mother and I were in. How is it that her voice was calling to me, yet she was sitting right here, quiet as a mouse? Then I realized my little brother was nowhere in the room. I couldn't sit in this room until I knew where my little brother was, so I quietly opened the door and snuck out to see if I could spot him. Well, I did find him, but it was too late.
"Honey, the food's getting cold. Come downstairs."
The sight was monstrous. I watched as my little brother, well, what was left of him, was being slowly consumed by this thing that towered above him. Its mouth stretched out to inhuman proportions. As bones broke under its jaw, it kept repeating,
"Honey, come downstairs. The food's ready."
I stood on the top of the stairs and watched the foul beast feast on my little brother. Tears ran down my face, but I held my mouth tight to prevent the thing from hearing me, or else I would suffer the same fate as my little brother. My heart, it pounded inside my chest. Blood dripped from this devil that stood at the bottom of the stairs. My eyes could see no more. I turned to run back to my room. My mother was in, and when I suddenly was stopped by a voice that sounded a bit too familiar. No, could it be? This voice was the sound of my little brother. I heard,
She's not real. She's not real. Don't go to that room. She's not real. Mother isn't mother anymore. She's not real. She's not real.
The door to the room my mother was in opened with a creak that served as a call to the thing downstairs. My mother stood in the doorway firmly as I heard footsteps head up the stairs. My mother stood stiff as a board, as if she didn't realize what she had done. The footsteps got closer. I ran past her and into my room, where I shut the door. I immediately locked it. Thoughts were racing in my mind. Was this even real? Surely this must be a well-played prank my mother thought would be a good idea.
It's okay, honey. I know you're scared, but I'll assure you, you have nothing to be worried about. Your father was just visiting.
My father? I asked myself, wondering if opening the door would be a wise choice. I heard the same voice from earlier again.
She's not real. She's not real. Mother isn't herself. Brother, you need to run. She's not real. Don't open the door. She's not real. Honey, open this door or else your dad will be very mad, honey.
No more of this. This can't be real. I have to be dreaming. I couldn't understand what I was in at the moment. I have to escape under any circumstances, but I was in my room. How could I possibly escape without going through the door? What I thought was my mother was behind with my apparent father. The window was still open. We were but 16 feet from the ground. If I jumped, I would survive, but most likely sprain my ankle, or even worse, break my leg. But I didn't see any other choice. This is it. How much am I willing to sacrifice for my life? All I have to do is jump. That's it. I walked towards the window.
I'm losing my patience, you little brat. Open this door or I will do it myself.
I looked down to the ground and set foot on my window frame as I felt the cold breeze hit my body. Here goes nothing. My feet made contact with the ground and my right leg hurt to step on, but I had bigger priorities than my wounds, and I was running far away as I possibly could. But the pain was so severe I couldn't even stand anymore. I looked at my leg and saw just why I was in so much pain. My bone was completely broken and the bone itself was piercing through my skin. I suddenly heard 2 separate heartbeats loud in my ears. I felt my leg begin shaking out of nowhere as I watched my bone completely retract into my skin. It didn't hurt. I felt nothing. I kept watching as the entire bone was no longer in sight and my skin looked as if nothing ever happened. I got up and my leg felt fine. Did I imagine the wound? There's no time for questions as I walked into my mother's car with the spare keys she gave me in case of an emergency. I drove and drove until I saw the neighborhood fade from the rearview mirror, just as I thought everything was okay. While I was checking my rearview mirror, I lost control of the steering wheel and swerved straight into a ditch. I remember hearing sirens from the distance as my vision darkened. I woke up in a hospital room feeling nothing but a cold breeze from the AC. I immediately sat up and remembered everything down to the tiniest detail that happened, from my mother to the man to my little brother and my leg and the car. And as I was thinking, the door opened and a nurse walked in. "Hey miss, I need to leave this place now. I can't be here," I said to the nurse, awaiting an answer, but all she did was stand there and stare in shock with a document in her hand. I began hearing a heartbeat. This heartbeat wasn't mine, and I don't know how I could hear it in the first place. As she fell to the ground, I went to pick up the document, completely ignoring the fact that a nurse just passed out but my curiosity is untamed, so I read the document. It was about me and my situation in the hospital. It read, patient suffered a broken neck, shattered spinal cord, eye popped out of socket, ribs broken, vital organs failed, death by severe damage to body, time of death 3:16 a.m. This can't be real. I'm alive and I feel fine. As I realized the hospital bed was a deep red with blood. It couldn't have been mine. Again, there was not a single scratch on my body and I felt fine. I walked out of the room and eventually found the exit, with the receptionist not seeming to care about the patient that just walked out of the front door. The sun was beautiful and it felt amazing on my skin. Luckily, I took the chance to wear the clothes I found in a room while I was looking for the exit. I saw the nearest man and asked them to point me to the police station. I had to report what happened back at my house. The man, I realized how off the skin of this man looked. It glistened in the sun, a metallic gray. I called out, hello sir, I need help.
Assistance? What can I help with? Do you wish for the location of a specific area? A taxi ride?
Taxi ride, yes, I need that. As I immediately realized I would sound crazy if I went to the police to tell them my parents were human eating creatures. The robot or android thing called a taxi. I took a ride to the neighborhood of my latest home. I heard the same bell that was followed by the immense fog. I looked behind me and I was greeted with the fast-moving fog as it covered in the neighborhood up front. I didn't care. I was determined to get to the house, so I walked and made my way. As my house came into view, I stopped in front of it and I noticed a girl who opened the window upstairs, staring directly at me. I heard a heartbeat again and I knew it was not mine. I saw as she passed out at the sight of me. I immediately felt a strong hunger shoot through me as I burst through the front door. I saw a little boy playing with a toy on the ground and I grabbed him. I'd lost myself. I took my first bite of his arm as he screamed. A woman ran up the stairs, but I was so hungry. My only focus was on consuming the screaming child, as if his scream fed my hunger. And I swallowed so much of him, he looked human no more. I sat there and enjoyed the meal. I left nothing but bones when I suddenly heard a door shut upstairs. I slowly made my way up the stairs, expecting another delicious meal. The door was locked as I stood there preparing to barge in. I saw as the girl from the window jumped out of it. I approached the window knowing she must have broken a bone which would completely immobilize her. As I stood by the window ready to take a leap at my food, I saw as she entered the car in the driveway and escaped my grasp. I let out a scream of disappointment and watched as she drove off into the night. This was odd. She kinda looked like me.